Today we are heading out on a new epic adventure, this time in Temple of Horrors. I mean, just the name itself makes your blood run cold, doesn't it? Today I'm going to take a look at this game, I'm going to show you how to set it up, and I'm going to go through the basic rules of this game. So once you get this baby on the table, well, you can take it out and you can start playing it right away. So let's just take a look at this. Before we start the setup, we should start by looking in this adventure booklet, because this will show us what we are about to face, or at least give us hints about what we're gonna face, the different difficulties of the different missions, but also some specific setup rules for that scenario. So before you do anything, start by reading the text on the scenario that you would like to play, and then we start the setup. We start by putting the starting tile at the edge of the table, but also drawing one map card showing us what the map will look like. Then we put our little standees on the starting tile. Then we need to place out the bosses, clues and map cards, but also the item cards. We take the top 5 cards and put them out faced up on the table, creating an item market. Just note that these items should be below the value of 10. We also need to take this card right here. This card is double-sided and it has number 69 in the corner. Now this here is put all the way over here next to the item market. And then we need to take these 3 tokens, a breach, barrier and illusionary wall tile, on top of the 69 card. And then we need to place the hour board above the starting tile and put this big red disc here at the start of the hour track. This map card here will show us a little bit of how we're going to set up the map at the start of the game. But we will of course not set up the whole grid, as we will explore this as the game goes along. But you can see up here is one enemy, meaning that we should put one tile with an enemy on it. 3 steps above, there's one more tile with one more enemy. Over here we have a chest, an enemy and one more enemy. Next we place out the initiative cubes on the table. The red one will represent the melee phase. The black one will represent the creatures out on the map, while the rest represents the players. Next we need to draw 6 tiles at random and place them faced up to create a market. And then we should find the laboratory, but also the animated weapon rooms, and place out next to the market. You can see the different room types by looking at the symbols in each room. We put the rest of the map tiles face down next to the play area, but also the rest of the components that you will use later in this game. Next, each player needs to choose a character that they would like to portray as. At the bottom you will have some stats. These are your starting stats. And now we're focusing on the hard stats, meaning your HP. As you can see, the mage have 3, meaning that we should put a yellow cube on 3. The rest of these cubes are put on 0 for now. Then we also need to take 8 mana cubes, 1 free movement token and 8 player cubes. Now 3 of these cubes are put on your player card. We also need to take your combat cards and put them on a table with the black star facing up, with a number 2 in it. On the other side you will have a black star with 6. These are face down for now. On the top of these we have the card with the red star circling the black number 2. You put these on the table, but you also take the card with the fully red star and put that next to your play area. Then you also get to take this player aid card that will help you through the game. Plus you have this cool little thing here. This is where you will fire out your cubes to try to make damage, but also protect yourself from the enemies. But I will show you this in a bit. And with that we are almost done with the setup, because we also need to choose one lead player, and the lead player is the youngest player. If there is a tie, well then just get along. You could also just say, hey, who wants to be the lead player, and then that player is the lead player. Or you could shift from game to game. It's all up to you. Now, once we have done the setup, we are ready to start playing the game. And the game is played over 5 different steps. The first step is the hour step, and it is not done during the first round. But for every future round, we should always do this step. During the hour phase, the lead player simply moves the time token one step to the right on the hour track. Now this track here represents the different rounds, or hours as it's called in this game. And when you come to the final hour, well, the game is over. As you can see here, we have some different symbols above the track. This indicates how many enemies that will spawn during certain phases of the game, but also the damage of the traps during this phase. The different phases are the green one, yellow one, orange one, and the red one, getting more and more difficult as time moves along. And you can see here there's also some symbols. This indicates that every time the time token reach one of these steps, we need to remove all the item cards from the market with new cards. This means that we need to remove all the current item cards on the market and refill it with new cards. Plus remove all of the tokens on the 69 cards and add 3 new ones, so there are 1 of each type. The second step is the initiative phase. Here the lead player takes all of the initiative cubes and roll them out on the table. And then we need to sort them going from north to south. And you can see which part of the map is north by simply looking at the start tile. Because north is always the direction heading away from the starting tile. Once we know that, we simply sort the little cubes here going from north to south, and then we will have the initiative of the players. Remember that the black cube represents the creature, the red cubes represents the melee phase, and the other color cubes represent you. Meaning that once we get to the yellow cube, well, it is the yellow player's turn to act. And with that we enter the third phase. This is the action phase and is by far the biggest phase of this game, because this is where the heroes will do their actions, but also the creatures will activate out on the board, all according to the initiative track we have just created, remember? Now, during a player's turn, you can choose to do one action, and you will do that action by taking one of your action cubes and place out on the map tile where you are. But you can also do any number of free actions, and there are quite a few actions. So let's start by taking a look at movement. So if the yellow player here would like to move one step, well then they simply take their action cube and put in the same room that they are in. Now they actually have 4 different directions that they can move to. They could move over to the red, yellow, blue room, but also up here. Now there are no tile up here just yet. But if they choose to move up to this area, it would mean that they move into an unexplored area. So they would need to draw one tile from the face down tile and place it out into this unexplored area. But they would of course need to place it in a way that makes sense, meaning that the different doors actually match. So you could not place a wall in front of the door. But why would you do that? No, just follow the rules and make a door match up with the door you came from. And then you can move into the new room. But if a hero moves into a room that is full of creatures, or if the creatures move into a room with a hero, well then you cannot move anymore, because now you are in melee. Meaning that now you can only do melee actions. And all of the moves that you would have had left are now gone. But if you, like in this case here, moved into a room where there were only creatures, well that move would actually be considered to be a charge and would give you some benefits during battle. But I will show you that in a bit. Now, each of these rooms have a max capacity, meaning the capacity of 5 plus the number of players in the game. Meaning that this one here would have 5 plus 4 players, because there are 4 players in this game. The minions here and the leaders will take 1 room space. But the big ones here, the bosses, they will actually take up 2 spaces. The heroes themselves also takes up 1 space. And if a room is full, you cannot enter that room. The next action you can choose to do is map. Here you would remove all of the tiles in the market and then draw 8 new ones from the face down, creating a whole new market for you to choose of in future gameplay. You can also choose to do a search action, but then you need to be in a room that has one of these black symbols. meaning either the library, laboratory, tomb rooms, holy pool rooms, animated weapon rooms, or clue rooms. But what does these different rooms actually do? Well, let's just look at that real quick. And when you do a search action, you get the possibility to get coins, magic shards, or experience points. Now, to do this, you simply remove the first card and discard it. And then you take up the 3 next cards. If these cards have any stars, coins, or magic shards on them, the hero immediately gains as many experience points equal to the number of stars. Now, each hero who participated in a combat with a creature, or the hero that did the search action, would get as many mystic coins equal to 2 plus the amount of coins drawn on the item cards. If you get a magic shard symbol, you will place 1 magic shard in the tile of the room color in the current room. So the rooms that has these black symbols can be searched in and activated. If they are not already activated, that is. Because if there is a deactivated token on the tile, well then you cannot use the room. But if it is still active, well then it can be used. In the library, you can spend 1 action cube to activate it and place a magic shard of the room's color. Once you have activated the room, well then you need to deactivate it. And these here are the magic shards. Now, they come in different colors, so depending on which color room you are in, you will get that color shard. Some adventures will require these, while you can also use them to buy items of a value of 3 silver coins. This one down here is the laboratory. Again, if it has a deactivated status, well then you can't use it. But if it does not, you can activate it. And you can use this to teleport yourself to any room within the distance of 4 tiles, or to another laboratory room on the map. But you cannot go to the starting tile. The animated weapons rooms up here you can spend 1 action to select a connected room within a distance of 3 and roll 1 cube per minion and leader which is there. For each black cube result, you can kill 1 leader, an elite, or a minion. For each red result, you can kill an elite or a minion, while for each yellow result, you can kill a minion. These creatures provide experience and work for side quests. And down here we have the tombs room. Now, this needs to be active as well as the others, but it needs to be a part of a group of rooms that is the same amount of players plus 1. And then you can spend an action cube in the room and open it to get to place a boss in that room. The holy pool room will let you heal your hero, while the clue room needs to be a part of the player count plus 4 rooms to be able to be activated. But once you have activated, you get to draw a clue card, if the adventure you are playing requires any clues. If it does not, well then you gain 1 experience. The skull up here is a danger room. When you enter one of these rooms, you need to do an encounter check, but I will show you how to do that in a little bit. This one up here is a trap. If you end up on a trap, well, your hero has entered a trap room. In this case, you would need to discard the first card of the item deck, then draw 3 cards to see the back of the cards. If there is a trap symbol, well, you first need to make a saving throw. If you do not manage to save yourself, well, then you take damage, according to wherever you are on the hour track. While the ones with +1 and +2 here means that whenever a creature enters these rooms, well, they will get +1 movement or +2 movement. So as you see, there are quite a few different rooms out there on the board. And depending on which adventure you are doing, well, the rooms will also have more or less importance for you. But there is actually one more room that you can use, which is actually also an action, because you can create a secret passage out on the board. Because if your hero is in a room that is a part of a 2x2 grid of rooms, you can create a secret passage, meaning one of these here. Now, this hallway here will convert the other rooms into its color, in this case blue. But instead of creating a hallway, you can actually also create a breach. But here you would need 3 actions, meaning that the first time you start to create a breach, well then you put 1 cube on it. When you do 1 more breach, you put another cube on it. When you finally have 3 cubes on the breach, well then you have made a passage between these 2 walls. And now you can freely move through these 2 rooms. Plus, any player can help you create a breach. If you want to attract a creature to your room, you can also create noise by simply placing an action cube in the room and attract future creatures. Finally, you can choose to use one of your hero's powers. By doing this, you simply take the card and then you take one of your action cubes and place it in the hero's room. And then you can of course choose to attack your enemies. Now you can do a ranged attack or a melee attack, depending on which mode you are in. If you are in a melee mode, meaning that you are in the same room as an enemy, well then you do melee attacks and can't do ranged attack. But if you are in a room without any enemies in them, well then you are in, well, normal mode. And then you could choose to do a ranged attack if you have ranged power attacks or ranged weapons. Otherwise, well, you cannot do a ranged attack. Let's take a look at ranged attacks first. So let's say that this character here would like to attack this enemy over here. First, you would need to put your action cube in the room, and then you should take the shot. But you need to be within line of sight, meaning that your line of sight cannot be obstructed by walls or any corners. No, there needs to be a straight line from you to the enemies. But there can actually be one unexplored tile in between you and enemy. But there cannot be 2 unexplored tiles, because that would be too long. But if you are within line of sight, and within 1 square away from your enemy, well then you could choose to take the shot. You can actually also shoot through rooms that has heroes and or enemies in them. But in this case you will take -1 hit penalty if 50% or more of the available space in that room is occupied. And you can shoot at any distance, but you will take -1 hit penalty if your target is more than 4 rooms away from you. So that was the ranged attack. But what about the melee attack? Well, when we come to the red cube on the initiative track, it's time for the melee actions to start. So if your character is in the same room as an enemy, well, you can do a melee attack. But first we need to do some deployment, because your hero can, in general, attack 1 opponent. And then they can assign their defensive slots to 1 to 3 opponents, simultaneously. Now, it's important to know that all attacks here, both the creatures and the heroes, are done simultaneously. And all effects must always be applied, even if whoever is doing them is killed. Now, each player involved in the melee attack, in this case just this one, needs to declare how to assign the defense slots of their hero to their opponents. And players can freely discuss and find an agreement on how to deploy their hero, but this is not mandatory. You can do it for yourself or as a group. Once you know which enemy you are attacking, well, those opponents are engaged by this hero. Likewise, a hero attacked by a creature is engaged with that creature. To be able to attack your opponent, but also to defend your hero, we use this combat board, which is quite cool. Now, you place your cube in this area down here. And you can choose to either throw out the cube or flick it with your finger. The only rule here is that your finger may not pass the red dotted line here. So if I, for example, take this cube and fire it away, I get a result up here. Now, each of these different color lines will give you different results. Once we have rolled our cubes, we need to check the result. As you can see here, we have different colors. The black area is a critical hit and will give you 5 damage. Now, the red area is 3 damage. But if more than 1 cube touches the red area, well, we unfortunately need to remove these and put them back in our reserve. The orange area will give you 1 damage, and when we get down here, we get defense instead. This area here gives you 1 defense. Down here we have 2 defense, and the blue area is the fumble area. The blue area down here is the fumble area. Here you will get a penalty of -2 for each fumble result, either to your hit or to your dodge that you have just scored. Now, if a cube should be placed in between two different lines, you can actually move it to either line you would prefer. If you manage to kill a creature, well then you simply remove it from the map and put it back to the reserve. So before we did a search action in a room, right? But if you kill a monster, meaning a leader or a boss, you actually get to flip these cards over and get the items stated on the cards. But you might not be able to keep all the cards. Because if it was a leader you defeated, well, you need to get rid of any card that has a 6+ value. And if it was a boss you defeated, you would need to get rid of any cards with the value of 8, 10, 12 or 14. Other than that, well, you are free to pick items, my friend. And these items will of course give you a bunch of different benefits during your gameplay. Extra HP, extra range, extra defense, more life, and so on. Some of these cards are a one-time use, but the ones that have this little symbol in the bottom right corners means that they can be exhausted and used again during the next hour. While the ones that have the little crossover here on the cards are a one-time use. And that's the way you attack in this game, which I think is just such a neat little feature, because this actually puts you as a player to the test. Depending on how good you are at flicking or throwing or whatever you want to do, well, that will result in the battle out on the board. It's just not up to a die that you roll and you just get a random result. No, here you actually need to make the effort to get the best defense or attack. Plus, remember that sometimes you will have a modifier. You will have a -1, for example, if you fire through a crowd, but there will also be other modifiers along the way. Plus, you can of course use your little cards here to make your results just a little bit better. And as the game goes on, you will also get better and better experience out on the board that will just build up your attack values. If your hero is in a melee attack but is in cover, you can actually do a ranged attack as well. But in that case you would roll and you would only note down the damage you make, not the shield results. Plus, if you are engaged or if you are covered, you can also choose to flee. Here again you would need to roll a cube to see the amount of defense you get. Choose the highest defense, and if you are alive, well then you might be able to flee away from this horrible situation. And if you die, well then you die. If you are in a really tight spot and you are out of action cubes, you can actually do a desperate attack. In this case, you would need to lose HP. Now, how much HP you are going to lose is all depending on which character you are playing, but it can be seen at the bottom of the card. The barbarian here, for example, needs to lose 3 HP. But in that case, they will get 2 action cubes back. And these cubes can be the difference between getting out alive and dying. And the creatures will of course also attack you back. Now, depending on which creature you are facing, they have different damage points. For example, skeletons, spectrons, and goblins deal 2 damage. While bosses have different damages depending on which boss you are facing. And they will deal you the damage that they have. So for example, if they deal you 2 damage, well that is what they will deal you. But the damage you take depends on the amount of dodge you manage to roll during the roll phase. Now, so if you have 2 shields, for example, and the attacker deals you 2 damage, well then you manage to block out everything. And if you don't have any shields, well they will deal you the full amount of damage. When you are fighting the more powerful leaders or bosses, you can use the track on the hour board to track their HP. When we come down to 0 on our HP track, well, we are dead. But not quite, because if you are in the green state of the game or the yellow state of the game, you actually respawn in the following hour. And you will respawn in a room where you have a friend that is not in melee. If everybody is in melee, well then you would need to wait to another hour until one of your friend is out of melee. But once you get into the orange and the red state of the game and you die, well then you are out. So that was the main actions. But we also have a bunch of free actions. Now, the free actions could be, for example, to use an item card or to buy an item card. It could also be to exchange things with another player that is on the same place out on the map. You can use your free movement token here to place out in a room that you're in and get one more extra movement. You can use your experience to boost up your stats here on your player board. You can use your powers, and the desperate attack that I showed you before is also a free actions. So there are a bunch of things that you can do in this game. Plus, I haven't even mentioned the free actions where you actually interact with the tiles out on the board. That is required to do according to the different adventures that you will head on to. So there are quite a few things that you can take on in this game. But I will let you experience that on your own. Now, besides attacking, the creatures also move. This is kind of their exploration action. And depending on if they're in a group or if they're alone, they're called different things. This here is a pack of creatures and they will move together. This over here is an alone creature and it will move alone by itself. During their activation, they will move one step, depending on which tile they move into. Because here they would get +2 steps, remember? And here they would get +1 step. Now, depending on where you are out on the map, they will move in different directions. If a creature sees a player, they will move towards that hero that they have in line of sight, because, well, they see you. Now, if there should be a tie where the enemy sees 2 heroes, the leader player will choose which hero that enemy will move into. But if they cannot see you, like in this case here, well, then they will actually start to listening for you instead and move towards the nearest cube. The maximum of distance of cubes depends on the creature's perception value. Now, if you are within 3 to 5 rooms, the minions can hear you. If you are within 5 rooms, the leaders can hear you. And bosses have a perception of 4 to 9 rooms. If they can't see or hear you, the creatures are considered to be wandering, meaning that they would simply move 1 room towards their perception value. Again, if there is a tie, the leader player would choose. Now, the creature packs have their own movement tokens. Once they have moved, we need to remove these tokens from the map to indicate that they have moved and cannot move again during this round. These cubes will later be filled up at the end of each round. So that was the action phase, which is the biggest phase of the whole game, as you can imagine, because we do quite a lot of things during this phase. Now, after the action phase, we will move into the encounter phase, because we need encounters, right? First, we need to check the board to see which player who have placed the most cubes out on the map. In this case, this player here. Now, this will be considered to be position 0 when we are going to place the encounters out on the map. If there should be a tie between the different players, well, the lead player determines who will have the most cubes and become position 0. Next, we need to check which game period we are in, because when we come up to the orange, we need to add 1 more encounter. And when we come up to the red, we need to add 2 more encounters. Then the players need to discard the top card from the item deck and draw the same amount of cards we had cubes, plus any extra encounters from the game period. Now, this one here is a magic shard, so nothing happens. But the next one is an encounter. And even if there should have been more coming up, it's only the first cards that we will take in consideration. To know where to place out this encounter, we first need to look at the numbers and the letters on this card. Here we can see N2, meaning north 2 steps. So we would look at position 0 and then go north 2 steps and place out the encounter. Well, how do we know which type of encounter to place out? Well, that depends on the color of the room. Because the enemies have colors on them, and they all correspond to the different colors out on the map. So in this case here, we should place skeletons, because, well, they are red. And every time you place out an enemy on the map, you also place out their token above the hour track, because this will determine how many of that kind you will place out on the map. If it is the first time you place out that type of enemy, you simply place out the same amount of enemies as there are players in the game. But as it builds up above the hour board, there will be added more enemies. For example, if you need to add one enemy and you have already added that type before, you will add the amount of enemies as there are players plus one elite minion. Once you have added two of the same type before, you add the same amount of enemies as there are players plus one leader. And eventually the bosses will come out. And with that we come into the fifth and final phase of a round. This is the hour end phase. Here the players simply get their cubes back from the map, but also have the possibility to recover up to 3 cards from the reserve back into their main area. Now, you also ready any exhausted cards that you might have used during the gameplay. For every barrier out on the map that has a creature in an adjacent room, we need to remove the barrier tile if it has a value of 1. Or we need to flip the tile if it has a value of 2, back to value 1. If there's any illusionary walls out on the map, we also need to remove them now. Each creature needs to get 1 movement token so we can track their movements in future turns. And that's the way the game goes on, hour after hour in the game, that is. Now, it can end in some different ways. If all the characters out on the map dies, well, the game ends. If you manage to complete whatever adventure you are doing, well, the game ends and you win. If this little hour token here reaches the final hour and you do not finish this little mission here that you are out on and that hour ends, well, then the game ends and you lose the game. And the game can actually be played in several different ways as well. You can play player versus player, you can play solo, you can play semi-co-op, you can play full co-op, you can play a campaign, you can just play one-offs, you can get more experience to bulk up your characters and make them stronger. There are a lot of things that you can do in this game, but I will let you figure that out all by yourself. Otherwise, this video will be hours long. And there are a lot of replayability in this game. I mean, look at this adventure booklet. There's so many adventures in here, you probably won't finish them all. Plus you got the player versus player. There's so many things that you can do here. The game evolves in itself, your characters evolves. Plus the characters themselves are quite different. So if you have played the barbarian, well, next time when you play the mage or thief or whatever you play, it will be quite different for you because the characters themselves are quite different. Also, until you actually learn how to play the character, when you have gained more experience, more life, when you have understood how to use these cards in combination with the items, well, it will take you some time to get into the characters as well. So each time you play will be a new game. The tiles evolve, the maps evolve, the adventures evolve. There are so much replayability in this game. Now, I have of course not played this entire booklet. It would be impossible for me to be able to do that in the amount of time I've had. But just by reading on the different missions, the different adventures, I can tell you that they are quite different. There's quite different missions, there's quite different things that you need to do, you need to accomplish. And with the different game modes here, the player versus player or the semi-co-op and co-op and so on, these missions will have quite different effects on the gameplay. I would say that if you are into dungeon crawlers, this game is for you. There is a lot to explore in here, there is a lot to do in here, and the game is quite huge. You can play it a lot of times. But the game is on the heavier side. There is quite a few rules in there. I mean, I have shown you the basic rules here, how the game works, but there are more rules in the game, so you need to read the rules just a little bit more before you start to play it. But if you know the basic rules of dungeon crawlers, if you have played dungeon crawlers before, it won't take you that long time to get into the game. But if you are brand new to dungeon crawlers, I don't know if this is the place to start, because there is a lot of things that you can do in the game. There is a lot of small rules that are easy to miss. So before you start to play, make sure that you have done your homework, watched this video, read up on the rules. Start out by just testing the game a little bit back and forward, and eventually, well, you will get into it. In this video I use standees, but you can of course also get miniatures to this cool game. And that, my friend, was Temple of Horrors, a huge dungeon crawler. If you're into dungeon crawlers, well, check this out. There will be links down in the description so you can know more about the game. If you like the video, well, you know what to do. Comment, follow me, whatever. But most importantly, my friend, I would say that I want you to keep on spreading that board gaming love that I know you all have. Until we meet next time, my friend, peace out.